Call this regular meeting with USD 350 to order. Welcome to all visitors in the camera. Additions or changes to the agenda?
Two additions I'd like to add. One would be for capital improvements and purchase in that regard on the electronic door locks, and then credit card authorization. We can discuss that and approve that.
I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Moon?
Second.
Move the second to approve the agenda with the noted changes to the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 7-0. Consent agenda items. We have the minutes of the July 2nd regular meeting and the July 9th special meeting. Sure you read through those, and the financial statements were sent to you. Questions or anything? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve that.
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's moved and second to approve the consent agenda. Discussion. All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 7-0. Patron comments. That all summer prepared.
I know.
All right.
Something profane.
And we'll move on to the first business item then.
Okay, I'm going to turn the floor over to Bill Sailors with Center for Innovative School Leadership and discuss our efficiency review.
Do I look okay?
Fine.
Did I see you 2 or 3 years ago, Carolyn?
We talked on the phone.
Okay.
Yes.
It's been that long since this process probably started, quite frankly. It's great to be here tonight. What a beautiful little community you've got. I love to drive around if I have a few minutes, which I did tonight, to go around and see the community. It's really cool to see the small communities. I hope everything's going well. You must have plenty of water. Either that or you're just proud of your yard, one of the two. I'm not sure which, but that's great. I'm not going to take up much of your time tonight because I know you got lots on your agenda. Josh asked me to come tonight. I know he's interested in this process. First step is the board has to approve the process, but let's go through it real quick, okay? If you just turn to page 1, I'm not going to read this to you, but just want to let you know at the Center for Innovative School Leadership, and we'll call ourselves CISL in the future. What do we do? How it started? All that good stuff. You can see the first part talks about the overview or what is CISL. It was started by the Senate in 2004. Actually created this process. We've been going for 7 years now. I actually didn't go do anything in 04-05. Started in 05-06 school year. It was created to do efficiency and effectiveness school reviews, bringing in teams of people on a voluntary basis to school districts to do reviews of your district. Basically, the statute was 1 paragraph long, and that's really what it said. It didn't talk about what it was going to happen. It didn't talk. The only thing it said is school district will pay for this service. We'll talk about that in a minute. To date, we've done 55 reviews. We've got 6 scheduled for this year, and you can read the rest of it and kind of the history of what we've done and where. I honestly don't. I believe that Governor Sebelius at the time was the one who brought back this idea. Then the Senate took over and decided to create this program. So I came on board 7 years ago and enjoyed every minute of it at this point. How does it work? It's really a straightforward process. We bring teams of people, and I'll talk about the teams in just a minute. If your board approves this process, to come on site to your school district to do what we call a review. It starts with, and I'm kind of out of order here a little bit, but we're going to ask for lots of things from Josh, and probably the principals, and certainly the board clerk. I assume you're the board clerk. We collect lots of information first from you. Part of that is, most of it is we want to give it to the team members so they know more about the St. John Hudson School District. If you choose, which most school districts do because it's just part of the service, we would do climate surveys with all different groups of people, parents, students, boards, principals, certified staff, classified staff. So those two processes, collecting information and the surveys, are kind of the precursor to when we actually come on site. When we've agreed to come on site, we will then bring a team of people in and we do an efficiency review. We're going to visit with as many groups of people as we can, including parents, boards, administration, teachers, classified staff, you name it. We're going to be on site. You're a relatively small district, so we're probably going to be here for a day and a half or 2 days. And then those team members write a report. At the center, we put that report together. And eventually, after a month or so, we come back, or I will come back, to give a presentation to you as the board. The recommendations that we might make are totally non-binding. They're entirely up to you to decide what you choose to do with those reviews, with our report. I'll be honest with you, in 55 districts we've done, some of them probably have never looked at the report again, and that's really too bad. And other districts have taken the entire report and made a 5-year long-range plan of it, and probably everywhere in between. We've done several districts in the area. I know Josh had visited personally with the Lyons superintendent, as I recall you said. We've done Lyons, we've done Kinsley. I'm forgetting already, but we've done 3 or 4 in this area. And we've done them from Uniontown, Kansas, to Hugoton, Kansas, to Highland, Kansas, to Colbert, Kansas, and everywhere in between. We've done small districts. Most of the school districts in the state of Kansas are around 500 kids. So the majority of our districts that we do are smaller districts. We've done Junction City, we've done Derby, we've done everywhere in between. And again, just to reiterate on how it works. If you people decide to do it, you must approve this process. I really want a buy-in from, obviously the superintendent's got to do it, but you as a board want this process as well. On page 2, it talks about what are the protocols. There are 4 areas that we look at. We look at facility management, we look at leadership, we look at teaching and learning, and we look at human resources. And it explains just a little bit about some of the things we might be looking at. So what I do is I contract with teams of experts, one person from each of those areas. The state statute talked about the teams being school people and business people. Didn't talk about a combination of how many, how that would work. So I've used about 55 different people. What I try to do is find people that are from the area but not the area, if you know what I'm trying to say. There'll be nobody on this team that would have any relation with anybody from the St. John Hudson district, that type of thing. Because quite frankly, they're going to give recommendations. I certainly wouldn't want that person to be afraid of saying something because their cousin was the principal or something of that nature. But those are the 4 areas we're looking at, and there's lots of things within those areas. The leadership as an example, we look at board and policies and procedures and administration and those kinds of things. And I'm not going to read all those, but you can kind of see what we're looking at. It said why the team. Well, I've already really told you why the team, because the state statute said there would be a team. And obviously, I know a little bit about lots of things. My background has been in education too, so I'm the superintendent, so I don't know anything, but I know a lot of things too. But the people that we bring in are people that you're either actively involved or recently been involved in school business, ranging from, for instance, we just met last week with a bunch of our team members, 3 or 4 of them, and one of them happens to be the facility manager of the Shawnee Mission District. Another person might be a retired superintendent or an active curriculum director, those kinds of things. I don't know, Carolyn, if you know Lynette Lacey by chance. Lynette Lacey is a business person from Hutchinson. She does a lot of my leadership. She's a tremendous leadership person. She has a long history of education way back, but primarily it's been more leadership, Kansas, that type of thing. So that's an example of a person who might come in. She might be or might not be. We haven't selected the team as you may or may not know. The cost, real simple, it's $1,000. you might be thinking, how in the world could you do this for $1,000? Or maybe I should charge $20,000, that way it'd be really important, because it's a lot of money, right? Well, we're on a grant from the state. Again, because of my school background, one thing we did not want to do is charge districts. We had to charge them some money, but we do not want you to not do this because of the cost. The money, basically, how did I come up with $1,000? Well, that's about what it cost us to bring a team in as far as their expenses. We do pay them a small stipend too, but motels, meals, that type of thing. Guys, that's the process. It's just that simple. Now, it really is straightforward. I will tell you right now, your superintendent will have lots of work to do. Your board clerk, I know she really wants to do this, would have lots of work to do because of the collection of data that we're asking for. We do, if you do decide to do it, my next move would be I will get back with Josh and we'll set up a time where I'd actually come out again and visit with him and we'd go through the intricacies of the process. New superintendent, probably already got his feet wet. He's just a veteran now. He's been here, what, a month? He's had one board meeting. If you want to do it this year, I would strongly recommend we wait till springtime, March, April, something of that nature, so that he becomes a veteran and knows what's going on, gets comfortable with everything. The advantage of that would be we'd come in late spring. We'd probably bring you a report by June, some May, June board meeting, something of that nature. That gives him, your principals, whoever, lots of opportunities to mull that over and look at it through the summer, maybe as board retreats, that type of thing may happen. So that's what I would recommend if you're willing to do it. Questions? I know I can't be that, but you probably got lots of you want to do. You'd rather not me listen, you talk.
Do you have sample questions or what you would be asking?
We will give sample questions to him, yes. However, it depends on the protocol and what they're looking for. I can certainly send sample questions, but what we also encourage the team members to do, we don't like to have I give team members some sample questions they may ask if they're struggling. But lots of their questions come from the data that collected and they get, and then they're asking you questions about, I saw that X, let's say, I noticed that the capital outlay, you spent this on this, could you explain that to me more? That type of thing, maybe for Josh, maybe you. The boards, a leadership person may come in to use the board and ask you questions about, tell us about the training that you guys get. What kind of training don't you get? Parents, we're going to ask how satisfied, we're going to ask questions for the parents about their perception about discipline issues, what kind of communication does the schools have. We're getting people's perceptions about things. We're looking for congruency. We'd love to see the kids and the parents feel the same way, the teachers. If we don't get that, then we're probably going to make suggestions about you might do it this way, you might do it that way. What our team is, first of all, in my opinion, they're experts in their field. I'd be lying to you if I told you certain team members have a stronger expertise in something and some other team member has a stronger expertise in something else. We try to do as much quantitative information as we possibly can, giving you, we believe that you need to do this because. But there's also to be a lot of qualitative stuff, because it's my experience that if you did it this way, this would make whatever situation better. The report is made up of 4 different things. The team member is going to tell me what did they find out about each of their protocols, whether it's leadership or whatever. They're going to have commendations in that area. What were the things that they really liked that they saw in that particular area? The third area is recommendations or opportunities for improvement. And I believe really if you want to go through this process, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for an outside group of people that's going to give you an unbiased opinion of what might be things that you might want to look at and do different. It may be something you say, absolutely not. We're not going to do it in this district. Our history is blah, 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 whatever. No problem. It may be something that you could do if you wanted to in 2 minutes. or it could be something that might take you 5 years if it's some huge item. And then they're going to have what's the impact of those recommendations. It could save the district X amount of money. It could cost the district X amount of money. Remember, efficiency is not necessarily just saving money. You might be more efficient, but it might cost you more money initially to do something, whatever it might be. And we're going to look at procedures and policies and all those kinds of things. And we know that changing whether it's policies, handbooks, whatever those things are, we may look at too. It takes a long time. We may make lots of recommendations, but you can't possibly do all those things overnight. Our reports average about 65 or 70 recommendations. I'm just going to tell you that probably out of that, school districts are going to dismiss some of them offhand. They're going to take some of them and run with them. And again, like I said earlier, it could take 5 minutes to change something if that's what you chose to do. I forgot to tell you too, there are 2 reports we give you. I come back to you with what we call the executive summary. And that executive summary is about a 10 or 12 page synopsis of what the team members said. We're going to hit what, in our opinion, is the most important things with that. And that's what I come to you with the report. About a month or so later, I sent to Josh, the superintendent, about a 90 to 100 page document that's going to have every comment from everybody about everything. I don't bring it to board because you don't want to look at that, first of all. And it's something it's going to take a long time to digest and look through. It's going to have all the survey information, what every single person said back up. It's not what they said, it's percentages they felt this way, not, I hate the school food or whatever, And the kids never say that, of course, but they're going to have an opportunity to comment. But that's not in a report because they feel like it's for private information. Because sometimes, unfortunately, some people may say things that are a little bit liable or something.
Bill, I have a question for you about the legislative post audit reviews that are coming up. I could volunteer our district to do that from the state of Kansas. And what would be different about your review compared to what the legislative post audit group will do?
Well, and I've never gone through the legislative post audit. I have read their reports,
okay.
So I'm not. Any newspaper people here? Yes. They're free. We cost money. In my opinion, the reports that I have seen, they're going to focus. They're going to tell you some things you can save money on. I would almost guarantee it. But there'll probably be things that are absolutely unrealistic to accomplish. That's my opinion. Also, we're going to bring in teams of people that have done this many, many times and have had school background primarily, or people who in the business world who have done this before. And they, so to speak, they've been there, done it. And so I think the difference, and certainly no disrespect to the post audit people, they're really good people. That's their thing. They're going to do audits. They're looking at those things from a accountant, State Department viewpoint. We're looking at it from the school perspective of what we see from this district versus other districts we've seen that are your size, and make comparisons and give you suggestions about it.
And am I right saying that your group, if we wanted to focus on a particular area, you guys might focus on a certain part?
Well, one thing,
if we would like to address a certain area.
Sure. And we do like to know if there are things that we're not going to be able to do everything in a short period of time. There's no way we can do everything. And we won't know your district like you know your district. But that may be good or bad. We think it's good. But also, we'd like to know if there are specific areas that you really want us to look for that we may or may not cover. And we need to know that, certainly, because that helps me to get a team member that might, let's just throw out busing, let's say. It may not be a big issue at all, but maybe you're looking at busing issues. Well, and that's really a thorn in your side. It's a really problem. Well, then I'm going to look for make sure that my facility guy, who also works on the busing issue, is gonna be, is probably has some experience doing busing, and will have some ideas for you with that. That's just an example. Absolutely, we will. Or we can.
And am I correct that legislative post-audit recommendations have a binding element to them, or at least an incentive to follow, and yours is not?
I honestly do not know the answer to that. I thought they did not have any, but I really don't know, Carolyn, but I don't think that they do either. I don't think there's any, not that I'm aware of. Cheney went through it, been 4 or 5 that have gone through it. I don't know if that's worth your time to do it. I think that gentleman's already gone from Cheney. But, there's been 3 or 4, and I'm not aware that they did any last year at all. I could be completely
Yeah, I don't
wrong.
know. I think they're only doing 3 this year, so
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it up to make sure.
Sure.
everybody knew.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm quite sure they do it, their report will be very thorough.
Mhm.
They do not focus on facilities, I do know that. I don't know that there's much teaching and learning going on in that particular one. I think they're focused more on the human resource side, personnel. I wouldn't say they don't talk about facilities, but a couple that I've seen, they hit block scheduling tremendously hard and suggested that schools do away with block scheduling. Whether you do it or not doesn't make any difference, but the obvious answer, if it takes more staff to do block scheduling. Well, you can eliminate staff by not doing block scheduling. Absolutely. But is it the right thing to do for your district? See, that's more important to me to know that, not that we wouldn't make those kind of suggestions, but that's one of the big things that they hammered with Cheney and, I'm sorry, somebody, and I think maybe Ann Dale did it too, and they were hitting that big time. But they were correct. They could save, I think, $150,000 to $200,000 just based on teacher salaries if they went away from block scheduling. I appreciate your time.
All right.
Just let me know if there's anything else you need, and we'll get back together.
Okay.
Nice to see everybody.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Any other discussion you want on that?
No, my recommendation is to go with this. I think it's an important piece of what we need to do to not only to help me understand, but us as a group to understand our district better, do things better. And I've got no,
Drink some water.
That we've made, I think there's gonna be some things that we've gotta be able to look through. You know, as district has downsized through the last several years, I think there'll be some things that we'll have to look at the whole picture of it and really understand that issue of it, because we are a smaller district than we have been. So that may cause some people to have some negative things to say, but also I think there's some things that hopefully we can look at the big picture. That pretty reasonable cost.
Sorry, you like to work harder. At least you've been here a couple of years, so.
It all pays the same.
Huh?
He said it all pays the same.
Any other discussion? I'd entertain a motion.
I move, Mr. President, I move the contract. We take the action of
CSIL review, there you go.
I move the board approve the CISL review for the 2012-13 school year at a cost of $2,000.
Second motion.
Been moved and seconded to approve the CISL contract for $1,000. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, right hand. Pose same sign, 7-0. Okay, next item of business is
I'm going to show you this real quick. Slow me down if I go too fast. Sometimes I forget that we're all focused on the schools here, but you guys don't do this all day, every day like I do. So I did want to show you this briefly here, just kind of shows how our budget works, all the funds. You know, it's different than a business would be. The state wants us to keep track of how we spend money and where it goes and where it comes from. That's the reason for all these funds. So you will see these in the budget. The top row is just the revenue. For example, the general fund, we levy a tax of 20 mills, which doesn't cover our entire general fund, and then the state aid makes up the difference. We use that, we transfer that to other funds. For this current budget year, it's just going to be the special ed, and then we use that to pay for the bulk of our operating expenses, most salaries and things like that. Food service fund comes from fees we collect, also a transfer from the LOB. LOB gets its revenue from a local levy, which is based on 30% of the general fund is what we can put that LOB or supplemental general fund at. We use that for most operating expenditures. There's a few we can't. We can't transfer money to capital outlay from there. And then we transfer that to all these other funds. So for, at risk is one where free lunch students, our funding is based on that. We have to spend so much out of there because we receive state aid. And then all of these have expenses related to that fund and what it's for. The textbook fund, the textbook fees we paid enrollment, that goes into a fund. We can transfer money to that as well, but the fees have to go in that fund and we have to use that for a specified purpose. Capital outlay, currently we can levy from 0 to 4 mills. In the last 3 years, I think it's been 0 and it's been up to 3. And that can only be used for buildings, buses, repair and maintenance of those, and purchasing them. The bond and interest fund, we levy a tax for that just to pay the bond and interest from our 2004 bond. And then we have a federal funds fund that we get some federal aid specifically for specified programs. Any quick questions on that?
You made a statement, I don't know if it's what you meant by it. When you said general fund, special education is the one thing that we're going to be. What's the other things that we could be taking out?
We could transfer this money into any of these other funds as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we just make the decision in the district office of where we're going to transfer money to, and this simplifies it. All of our special ed aid from the state comes through there, paid right into there and right to the co-op. And we pay some of our local funds to them as well. So we could actually, these two funds, transfer all of that, any of that money into those different funds. Yeah, answers your question.
I was just curious. Another thing is, on the student paid funds for lunches and things, is there quite a deficit between the people, or do we pretty well come out even with that?
We don't. We have to transfer money in there. We don't, it's not self-sustaining. Am I saying that right?
Correct.
We don't collect enough money from lunch fees to cover our costs there.
And the books are the same way?
We can pay for textbooks out of any of the general fund or supplemental general, but the fees that we collect for the textbook rental, we have to use that money for what we say we're collecting it for. So we may pay for some of the textbooks out of that fund, and then just pay for it out of general fund too. I'm going to go through this here with you. Stop me if you have questions. I'm not texting my wife and saying I can drive this thing. The budget, I'll talk a little bit more about the logo there. I know I've sent you all notes on that. If you look at your supporting documents on your files there, if you go up to File and then go down to 1, 2, or 3, there should be supporting documents there. It's page 25. You'll have the cash balance sheet. I don't recall if I sent this to you or not, but in some of my Friday notes I've mentioned that, but this spendable cash balance, all those different funds that we looked at, 25. So that shows you all the different funds. That's our spendable cash balance. Some of the funds we can't spend, like for instance, bond and interest, we can't use that to pay our teachers because we told the public we're collecting it to pay that off. This is what our cash balance has done. This includes those funds that we can use, we can build up cash balance in and spend it on what we say we're going to, virtually anything as far as operating expenses. And this also includes the contingency reserve fund. So what has that fund done? Well, you can see it here. We're losing some of our cash balance. So we're spending more than we're taking in. We zero out the general fund. We can only spend our budget authority in the supplemental general. This doesn't include capital outlay. I didn't include that there. So if you see the balance has dropped by roughly $8,000. Now, just looking at what the cash has done here, we know it's coming down, but so has our overall budget. We've lost kids, our budget has been shrinking. So you would expect that our cash balance reserve would be shrinking too. So that's why I included this to look at, well, what's the percentage of the general fund? I wouldn't say this is 14% of our overall expenses. It just gives you an idea of our budget's been shrinking, and this percentage has been shrinking also. You can see we're still way above where we were in 2008, 2009. So the question we have to ask is, what is our cash situation like? I think we're good right now, but we do need to recognize that trend. We can't continue it indefinitely. So to stop that trend, we have two options. Increase our revenue, which really the only way to do that is to get more kids. And that's not, I mean, we always want to do that, or reduce expenses. The other thing we need to ask ourselves is, are we comfortable where we're at? Well, if you think about our payroll is approximately $150,000 a month. Our spendable balance right now is at $352,000. So if state aid comes in late, we've got plenty of money to pay our bills. That's what we need to look at. Consider 2 months worth of expenses. There was a study out about what should schools and businesses have on hand in operating capital to operate their business. They recommend 2 months worth of expenses. That's at 17%. So even when you include capital outlay, we can't really pay our teachers with that. We have the cash in the bank. Our checks aren't going to bounce. So we have 23%. So we're well above that 17%. So another question would be, what about some other funds? One of those is capital outlay. Balance has dropped dramatically. I wouldn't say this is a concern. Big purchases like
The
bleachers, bleacher project,
New Suburban,
a new Suburban.
or new to us, but relatively new used staff car.
Right.
The last payment on the activity bus last year.
So there's some big purchases in there. I wouldn't call this a concern, but it's important to look at and know. So we can only use this money for repairs and maintenance and purchasing buildings and land and equipment like buses. This levy, we decide what it is each year within the budget. Okay, it's not set in stone. We set that. Also, bond and interest fund, I'll get to that a little bit later. So on this, the budget, what we're going to look at here on page 23 and 24. So you didn't order those right, so you have to go back up. Page 23 and 24 shows you the code 99. That's what we publish. This is our authority to spend money. So sometimes we might think of, well, this is my budget. That's what I expect to spend. This tells us how much we can expect to get. Okay, the line item budget that we decide how much we're going to spend in each building and how much we expect to purchase over the year, that comes separate. So this code 99 here is just gives us an idea of what we expect to bring in, how much we can spend, if that makes sense. So you'll see some of the things Like capital outlay, if you look at that on the code 99, which is close to the top. So you see last year, you see how that's laid out, the 3 columns. This year, we have in our budget is $402,000. Do we really expect to spend that? No, I don't. But we need to have the authority to do that. So, and forgive me if you know this, I'm making sure I cover everything. So, we don't have a dramatic increase over last year or the year before that. This is just establishing our authority. Okay, any questions on this stuff so far? Big question a lot. We'll ask, what's our mill levy going to be? Well, we levy taxes for four funds in the district, and then we levy it for the Recreation Commission also. Our mill levy will be down about 2.4 mils. Valuation is up quite a bit. So a lot of this mill levy going down is that valuation going up. So we don't need to levy as much taxes to get the same revenue. And keep in mind, we budget dollars. We don't budget mills. You'll see in some of those, like the capital outlay, for instance, we didn't set the mill levy at 2.995. That comes later. We budget the dollars and the mills are estimated. So here's a look at our history. Our general fund is always 20 mils. Supplemental general is based on 30% of the general fund, sort of. And then they established the mill levy on that. So you see that's where a big drop was. Capital outlay, this is the one over time. The board has kind of tweaked to keep the mill levy, overall mill levy in check. So this year we can put it at 4 and we'll still be down. Bond and interest fund is lower. So our total mill levy is back up to the supplemental general. We can go to 31%, but we have to have an election. So if that was something we wanted to do, it's about $28,000 if we would move that up 1 more percent. So that would be 31% of the general fund, which is about 2/3 of the mill. So if we would do something like that. Keep in mind, next year this is going to go away. That 5 mils is gone. So last year we'll have to levy taxes from there. On page 26 is the Form 150. I'm not going to go through that, but if you want to look at it, if you're curious how that all works, that's how we establish our general fund. So the budget that we're approving is based on a total full-time equivalent. Enrollment is flat. Actually, it's going to be down a little bit, but we padded it a little bit. Because if we pad the budget a little bit, we hopefully don't have to republish. But hopefully we do. Hopefully we do a lot more kids than we have to republish because we have a lot more money here. And if we don't pad that, the LOB, we can't go back and republish it. It's set. So if our general fund goes way up and we republish, our LOB is set. So hopefully we cover that there. So when you're looking at the budget, please keep that in mind. Also, expenditures are inflated for the budget authority, like I mentioned, the capital outlay. And then when we're building this budget, we've kind of worked in the 2.5% increase for across the board for staff, and then we know some of our increased costs, some of them we're guessing on. Okay. So where are we going to be if I take the actual anticipated budget? And again, we haven't established this officially, but this, while building the budget for authority, I kind of look at what do we expect to spend and where do we expect to be here a year from now. And keep in mind, we'll do what we can to reduce this, and this is a guess of where we might be based on last year's expenditures. If we spend about the same, where are we going to be? Well, there's a state aid increase which added $38,000. Okay? But lost revenue, because our FTE, our enrollment, is actually going to be down
total kids we have is gonna be pretty flat. But since we've been working on the 3-year average, our number was pretty high last year, higher than our actual count. So the lost revenue from that will be down. Cost increases between salary increases, food costs are going up, water bills going up, insurance has gone up a little bit, and then counting in the expenditures we had last year, what we overspent, we expect to be down another $130,000. Now, where does that put us? Well, we'll be putting it at a 9.3%. Let's go back to that percentage. That would be putting us down around 9.3%. Back up to this, what we're looking at. So we would be back down on our cash balance around 2008. And again, this is where we're talking about what money are we actually going to spend, and we should know a better idea by next meeting where our actual budget is. Now, where was this money coming from? Well, contingency reserve, we can take money out of this, put it into the general fund. That was allowed last year, it's allowed this year again. So we're going to take a lot of that and make up that. We're going to take $10,000 from textbook fund because we're allowed to. Gives us a little more flexibility where to spend it. So there's your $130,000. This will actually show an increased general fund budget. Okay? Really what we're doing is what you guys had authorized to do about this time last year. Okay? You had a plan to take $130,000 out of contingency. So really, this is a temporary fix that you plan on doing last year. We're going to do it this year instead. Okay? Does that make sense? That's the key word. Temporary. We can't keep doing that. The other fund we're talking about that we haven't really talked about is a bond and interest fund. We've had a cash balance there. We're basically working a year ahead. We can only use it for that purpose. We will be able to pay this off next year, so we'll be levying the last taxes we need for that year. We paid off early, we're going to save $6,700 in interest cost, and our mill levy is down just a little bit even here. So that's kind of what that looks like. Yeah. Here's your $6,700. If you want to see that later on, I'll send it to you. The capital outlay. Every 5 years, it could be 1 to 5 years, we need to pass a resolution that authorizes this board to levy a tax for capital outlay. We can do it up to 5 years. The last one was for 5 years. The maximum is 8 mills. Right now we're at a maximum of 4 mills. So we could consider raising this to 8 mills. Keep in mind that's only the maximum levy that this board is allowed to set. And the actual levy is established each year in the budget. Okay? So next meeting, we're going to need to pass this resolution, and we'll need to decide whether we want to do that for anywhere from 0 to 8 mills. Keep in mind the bond's going to be paid off. That's 5 mills this year. It's been 5 to 6 mills the past few years. So if we bump that up to 8 mills, even bumping that up to 8 mills, you're still going to be down 1 from this year. And that allows us for flexibility. We could float another bond if we had facility improvements we wanted, but costs are a lot higher there, or we could pay for things as we need to out of that. So something to consider.
Can you just do it for 1 year, or do you have to do it for 5 years?
Now, we can do it for 1 to 5 years.
Okay.
And again, all that's doing is setting the maximum. So I guess the check is with this board, let's say you set it at 8. In September, we decide to set it at 8 mills. Each year that we go through this process and set the budget, we decide what the mill levy will be.
Okay, so it's not always going to be 8.
No, it's not. You're not setting the actual mill levy, you're setting authority to levy up to a certain.
In other words, we're not having to publish the capital outlay every year, every 5 years. So we're have the ability to go up to 4 right now. We'd like to go up to 8. In other words, it'd help us keep level versus having peaks and valleys.
When you talk about using it, we could use it for like technology too, right? Not
To
just on the
purchase
facility,
computers,
but
yes.
improving
Yes.
all our technology throughout the
Yeah.
K through 12.
And I understand correctly, we kind of have we have a $28,000 penalty this year by being on the 3-year average, just because we hit a mark where our enrollment didn't decline, right?
Correct. But on that, the loss of revenue, you can take, when we say how many kids we have, we can use the number we had this year, we can use the number we had last year, or we can use the 3-year average. Last year, the third year back was a big number. So we were working on a bigger 3-year average. Well, this year, I expect to use this year's number. I'm guessing 307 is where we're gonna be at. That's kind of shot in the dark, but based on numbers we've got, some good guessing, but yes, that's where that 28,000, this number. Enrollment's been pretty flat the last 3 years. Last 2 years and expected this year. Go back 3 years prior, there was a big number in there that kept that average high.
So we can go back and forth, we don't have to choose one system instead of an
No,
average.
each year you take the highest one. So we're just at that point now where we're off of the big numbers. We're just using our actual numbers. If that makes sense. Other questions? The question that Bill asked there on the, on this 8 mil situation. Sorry, Siri. My phone is talking. It is very important that the public understand this too, because once we start talking about this, they say, well, that school board wants to raise our taxes as high as they can, they're going to go up to the maximum. And that's not it at all. Every year we approve that budget, and you guys are that check that we are letting the correct amount that the public will support. So, and this is only a maximum. And I bring that up because I just went through that. People feel a bit about raising the taxes to the maximum, but it is this very thing. So it's important to be very clear about that. And that's my job. Other questions? And if you have any questions after this week, give me a call. I can show you some of that. I know some of it's tough to understand.
Again, I would entertain a motion to approve the budget as presented for publication.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the 2012-13 budget as presented for publication. Is there any further discussion? Well, thank you for presenting that in a very presentable way. All those in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7-0. Next item of business. Staffing raises.
I gave you a sheet in there on page 27 to show kind of how we figured the certified raises. It's always tough to decide what is the percent that we gave the teachers. Well, we made facts full-time and we lost the second grade position. So what did that do to it? You know, trying to consider all those things. We're going to pay a little bit more for a band teacher this year. So the way we figure it is, what if this staff stayed here next year, what would that raise be? So that's kind of how we came up with the percentage there. So I don't know if past practice is this, but from what I understand, that's kind of what has been done, but the 2.5% increase is equal to the certified staff raises, and it amounts to about 12,000 for classified and 3,000 to 3,500. I can't recall the exact amount. Less than $3,500 for
to administrators.
What was the total dollar amount that we have to roll with that?
So about 30,000, 33,000. When you consider our cost overall.
Does that number include the stipend? The one time?
Yeah.
Mr. President, I'll move the board approve the 2.5 increase for the classified employee wages, building administrators, effective August 24th.
Second motion.
Moving second to approve the 2.5 increase for classified employee wages and building administrators, effective August 2nd, 2012. Is there any discussion?
Custodians, teacher aides,
Salary,
food service.
hourly, wages.
Basically, it's not a salary.
So how much would the start process total?
That would be 15.5.
15.5 just for the classified?
And two principal, about 12,000 for the classified.
Yeah. So, any further discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7-0. The SCK, SEC assessments for 2012-13.
Those are presented, I'm not sure if this needs to be something that we approve every year, but I saw in the agenda, it was last year, just kind of a formality. We need to pay it regardless. That's the schedule, so this, I guess, authorizes us to write those checks. No, this is actually our local assessment. The flow-through money is separate. The flow-through money is the 364,000. We're not discussing that, we're just discussing the local funds that we're paying. State aid doesn't cover everything.
Is this going up? You know?
I didn't bring that sheet.
If it is, it's not much. It's pretty flat
The
from
one thing
last
that
year.
changes that is if you have more kids, remember,
I don't know if we're getting more kids identified throughout the years or not.
that was pretty flat.
It's based on enrollment compared to other school districts in the,
So it's not based on the IEP. It started, it's based on our whole
total
enrollment.
enrollment.
I see.
I thought I had history here, this just shows us the number.
I'd entertain a motion for that.
Mr. President, I move we approve the 2012-2013 special education assessment payments as presented.
Been moved second to approve the 2012-13 special education assessment payments as presented. Any discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7. All right, library bill.
Well, you should have my budget.
Page 28, under supporting documents. And I think, I'll interrupt you before you start. I think what I have here is just a little different.
Okay, it's
This
not my
one?
updated one.
Okay, is this that, I think,
The only thing that's different is I put the comparison to last year.
okay. I think what I had
Is your books line 15,000?
No,
Or is it 13,000?
it is 15,000.
15,000.
It is 15,000.
So on yours, it will change about $2,000. The books there is 15,000 and this would be bumped. It's about 2,000. That makes sense?
And the reason I did that, we have just signed on to go with the consortium, the Sunflower E-Library, and we're going to start purchasing ebooks for our library and our patrons. And that ought to be up and going in by the middle of September, I think. So that's one of the reasons that went up. And the Friends of the Libraries purchased some books for us. We had some memorials, so I just added some more there. I spent $13,000, $11,000 this past year, but we want to get a good stock of ebooks so our patrons will be happy and using. I also increased, kind of things went up and down, but really basically everything else is the same. Where it says Mark Bryant, last year we found that he was getting overtime. You guys remember that discussion? I don't know if that happened here or not. But because he was working for the co-op and then coming to work for us, it was still, and it, we were viewing it as the co-op was something different, but it's all the same. So the library board is, or the library is, part of his salary is coming out of the 72 fund instead of the, I don't know what fund, to pay the overtime that he's getting. And it's not every month and all the time, but it accumulates. I don't know, do you have any questions? The only other thing, and I don't know how to explain it, is our budget for 25 would be 27, but we don't really need to ask you for that yet because we had 25,000 left at the end of the year. So those are the only major changes. So from last year to this year, I've increased the budget by about 2,000. Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the library budget as presented.
Second. And the second to approve the library budget as presented. Is there any further discussion?
I just need a refresher, stuff before, but like, the endowment money goes to the general fund and we use that to pay salaries, which are budgeted for separately, is that right?
Salaries, utilities, the bulk of the operating expenses for this building are paid out of district funds, whether it's a general fund or,
General fund,
is it all?
either general or
Utilities.
supplemental general, because some of the
Okay.
utilities are coming out of supplemental.
And then the city they budgeted 18,000. We didn't get quite that much because it's from an ad valorem tax. But that just flows through the library board to the school board.
Okay, and then how is the South Central endowment, how does that flow? Is
That's
flows into the that flows out of the,
Education.
And that's the 72.
that comes
fund.
out of the endowment and goes straight into the 72 fund. It does not go into the district fund.
So this fund here, that would be all the foundation money, correct? In the 72 fund.
At least that's my understanding.
Anything that's.
Yeah.
So how much comes out of our general fund?
Up there is, oh wow, we don't know.
Yeah, this and, I don't know a number off the top of my head of what that is. It's significantly more than this, when you include all of the salaries.
I think we talked about it.
It's approximate, it's somewhere between $195,000 and
And I
$225,000.
thought it was like.
And that includes all of this, correct?
It doesn't include the 72 fund, it
Okay.
includes all of the salaries for, and then all of the utilities, repair and maintenance on the elevator, maintenance supplies for like the restrooms and that kind of stuff, telephone, copy machine,
And it's.
pest
it-
control.
The thing is, though, the building's used by the school and the
Sure.
co-op, and that's not separated out either. I mean, it's all still kind of lumped together.
Right. So it's tough to,
So we essentially are tonight approving the budget of how we are going to spend our endowment funds.
with the 72
Because if the
fund
endowment
and
funds are
how,
coming to 72 and we're focusing on that part of it tonight.
Well, I have to have a formal what I was told several years ago was, I have to have a written request to come to you and ask for money out of the education fund.
yes, and that's as part of the interlocal agreement, does specify that the board has to, the library board has to ask the school board for, present that budget and ask for permission to spend that money. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, and we don't have to request it because it's still in there from a couple of years ago, I guess.
She doesn't need it right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I won't, you're approving my budget, but it's still, I'm not requesting any money to,
Right. Not requesting a draw on
Right.
the
right.
foundation money.
And a motion and second. Any further discussion, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor, right hand, opposed, same sign, 7-0. Thank you for presenting. Thank you for sending your emails too, appreciate it, just keep us informed what's happening.
Good.
Shared staff agreements?
This is another thing I'm not sure that we need to approve every year, but better safe than sorry, I guess. I sent the letters in the packet. This is another thing that because of the computer issues didn't come through. I've got those two letters here if you'd like to see them, if you need another copy. But it's for the elementary counselor and Spanish shared agreements there. So I recommend approving those.
Mr. President, I move we approve the shared staff agreements.
So it's been moved and second to approve the shared staff agreements with USB 349 as presented.
I'm
Is there
sorry,
any-
I did not catch you seconded.
A bill.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Not, all in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7-0. All right, the APTA funds.
We had some discussion on this last meeting. I think this is something we're going to have to go to at some point anyway. It does seem like quite a bit of a cost there for the training and data conversion, and that is several days worth of training. 3 days, and a couple of days of data conversion,
And that's on-site training. They will come
and
here
5
and do
days
the
on
training.
site training. follow-up consulting, so. We don't have the staff to do all that conversion themselves, so that's part of the cost. I did talk to Mr. Smith about the security concerns, and they sent us a document that I couldn't make heads or tails of and sent it on to him. He feels comfortable doing it. He sent that on to Bill Forbes. I'm not sure who was familiar with him, but Mr. Smith consults him about some computer issues. He's given me a few questions to ask the company before we start officially, but.
When would this be implemented?
Depending on their time frame.
Probably not until late fall. They're booked until probably October, November, December, somewhere in there.
And they try to do the conversion at a quarter. So probably, if it's late fall, it would probably be right after the first of the year. And you roll everything over.
You have the first year cost here, what would it be after that, the annual?
Yeah, the annual recurring cost, 65. And I think
Oh, I
in a
see.
previous email I sent that we had about $4,800. Just looked at the last year's cost for that. It was $5,800 for all of the
$700
software
more.
that we're replacing with this web-based system.
We sign a contract for a certain amount of years?
Do you know the answer to that?
I don't believe so. I think as long as we have the software, we're gonna continue to pay an annual support cost, because if we don't, we're not gonna have access to updates, and they will, part of what this package does is they load all of the federal tax bracket changes at the beginning of every year, all of the state brackets at the beginning of every year. Any changes that they make to K-Pro are all loaded. All of that stuff is done on their site to where our staff doesn't have to keep track of it and make sure that it gets taken care of.
I just didn't know if we could lock in the rate.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I'll check and see. Right.
Do you use check writer when you're writing the checks for the?
It's part of the fund accounting software that we currently have.
And you already have?
It will replace the existing software, but yes, there is a check writing feature to it.
They ever direct deposit, is that a possibility, or?
We already utilize direct deposit. It's not mandatory, but anybody who wants it can use it.
Anybody, I didn't hear much.
She already has it.
Oh, I see.
It's not mandatory anymore.
Does it save you any money other than labor?
The cost of the checks, the check stop, and they're expensive. So,
Our pay stubs and all that can just be online where they can go view them. If they want to, they can print them off, but they have them in there. On their account, you can view them anytime. Saves us that cost. And the backup.
yeah, they'll be handling all the backup on site. We don't have to worry about that anymore.
And right now, when we back up, put it in a drawer, is that right?
Saved on an external hard drive on my desk.
So this will be saved off, so on their part, so. Have a disaster here, it's backed up right now, it's not. It's backed up, but it's not very well.
Well, when they put this system on, they had to pay a first year cost. Everybody's got a first year cost sometimes. It's only $700 more a year.
You'd be cursing us in the spring when you have Cecil and this at the same time.
That's the point of paying them to do the data conversion. It shouldn't be an issue. It should be seamless. All of our history, all of our database should be rolled into the new software so that when we go through and start having to generate reports and doing that kind of stuff, it shouldn't be an issue.
It should be a matter of learning it.
Is this a, is this the capital outlay?
I don't,
Because the software is
I
not.
don't know. I will check on it, but I don't think so, since it is software. You know, software is part of a computer purchase, you know, if it's included in that. I'll check.
Or buy a computer.
Yeah. Yes, ideally, we're going to take as much out of capital outlay as we can. And if we can, we will, but I don't think we can.
Entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the purchase of the Apple Fund system.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the capital fund system. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7-0. Disposal of excess property.
We have some desks in the home's backyard, and there's that we need to get rid of. This is CP's always so good to get me those. And then Suburban that we just replaced, number 23 is the oldest one. Time to go. We could always keep it, but 160,000 miles. It's going to cost more to keep it, just to get rid of it. So the plan would be, we talked about maybe trying to sell those desks. That's a hassle if we could, maybe look into it, but otherwise we just salvage them, see what we can get out of the steel, and make steel bids for that Suburban.
I'll move the board approve the disposal of the excess district property as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the disposal of excess district property as presented. Any discussion? Stan, you don't need any yard ornaments or anything?
I've got all I need.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7-0. Board policy, KASB, recommend policy updates. First.
I see no problem with any of the policies. They fit right with what we have. One area, that's also on your files there. I'm not going to go through all these individually. A lot of it's just wording changes to fit with current law. Again, if you go up to file and put up policy updates. The one I did have a concern about is our local policy. JDDA, drug-free schools. The policy is listed here that we insert our own local sanctions, which we have in our handbook and everything, which I put notes in your packet there. But here's how our current policy reads on drugs, alcohol. The first offense, punishment up to and including short-term suspension from activities, and of course we can always refer to law enforcement and take those actions, and then it outlines second offense, what we can do, third offense. What concerns me about this, and Mike and I talked about it a little bit, if you have something, it doesn't happen here, but God forbid, you want to leave yourself some outs, but you have a kid cooking meth in the boiler room or whatever, or selling cocaine, or something crazy like that. Well, according to our first offense, our district policy, up to short-term suspension. I think something crazy like that, we don't want that kid around I shouldn't say it like that. We don't want that kind of behavior in our school. We want to make a statement. So, concerned that this policy locks us in too tightly on a drug offense. So we would just change it to listing the sanctions that are possible. Short-term suspension, long-term suspension, expulsion up to a full year, which is the legal maximum. Suspension from activities, and then as part of long-term suspension, it could have some rehabilitation. So I think that leaves it a little more open to interpretation.
Now, when you put that on there about completed drug and alcohol, then that's the school's responsibility to pay that?
No,
Since we're
no, and
requesting
actually
it?
it says that specifically right there, the last sentence. That the student and the parents would be responsible for that. And this isn't saying that's what's going to happen, but it's an option we have.
Well, you have to
You
be
don't have-
specific.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have the authority to demand that they participate in the program. We're just saying that if they want to come back here, they've got to agree to have gone through the program.
If you want to shorten your suspension or something like that. Yeah, and that, I guess it doesn't say that, but yes, it's part of that long-term suspension. Require that. But the point is, it gives us a little more leeway in not spelling out exactly what happens. And you could list all the possible offenses and all the punishments.
So that would go, were you going to insert that up above?
Yeah, in the policy, the actual KSB policy. Student conduct, any student violating this policy is subject to, and then we put our sanctions there.
Is there anything on teacher drug and alcohol?
Yeah, and that's part of the drug-free workplace.
Back up there, GAOD, I guess. Program, yeah. Very versatile.
And it's not the entire policy, but it's updates.
Eight point, maybe.
So we're supposed to choose an alternative?
Yeah, we don't have to fill in all those blanks now. It'll be a USB 350 program. That's what that is. Put our And again, this doesn't include all of the policies. And updating these policies, not just with these yearly updates, but getting it online where we can search it. I mean, not just in the big blue book is something I want to try to do this year.
I was gonna say, this might be something important to start updating with.
Yes. I can't answer where all the updates are, if it is actually updated. So it needs some work. But ideally, we do this every year and we plug it in. Up at the top, it kind of explains what each policy is and what's being changed and why they're recommended.
It seems to fit in with the discussion of policy on bad behavior, what is, what do we have that covers, student, teacher relations?
I can't quote you the policy.
We have, but it's just that we're not
yeah.
updating it at this particular time.
Yeah. The state
On that.
law has a lot to say about that.
And maybe I'm like just not seeing it all, but it just,
Mhm.
when it talks about the language of this policy is expanded completely, even with lawful use possession. And it just talks about alcohol. Is there anywhere that's talking about drugs?
Well, this is just an update, so they're just putting in that underlying there. Yeah, there's probably more to
Somewhere
that
else.
policy. if you read the
Yeah,
GAO.
most of them are, alcohol and illicit drugs, most of them say.
That's good.
The wording is.
See, it
unlawful
talks
possession.
about alcohol.
Yeah,
Controlled
Oh, I
substance,
see.
not
Controlled
manufactured, should be
substance.
dispensed, possess, control.
Okay, so that's covered.
So between now and the next meeting, if you have thoughts on that, things that need to address, concerns you have, we'll put that on the agenda next month and approve those policy updates.
All right, move to the added agenda items, capital improvement purchase.
Okay, this would be adding door locks to the breezeway, on both sides of the breezeway, and then one on the east end of the building by the elementary playground. That one is desperately needed. The breezeways, I mean, it's kind of a safety concern. That door that goes into the courtyard from the breezeway is never locked. There's not the ability to lock that. It has to stay unlocked. And that's outside access to the building. Those doors are tricky. Is that the right word for those doors? The locks work. They all work fine. Having the ability to secure those whenever we want with those electronic door locks would be beneficial. Ball games and things like that makes it a lot easier. People going in and out, ease of access there. If the teacher going through, the door doesn't catch, or send a kid through, a manager through to props it open. And just make things a lot easier to deal with there. I did call him to see how much the one, if we decided the breezeway wasn't necessary, the one on the east end, we still need some electrical upgrades, the panel upgrades for the actual security system. It'd be $6,800 for the one door if we ran the wire. This one, if we run the wire, would be $11,500. So you're looking at $4,800 more to add the two breezeway doors. I would look at having someone run the wire. I think somebody locally ran that wire before. I'll be in contact with him to see what he could do for us. But their quote was $15,629.
What about those doors that are down by the 5th and 6th grade that go out to the kindergarten? Used to be you'd have to shut one door before the other door shut. Is it still like that?
Yeah.
Do they have the electronic locks on them?
Mm-hmm.
And they shut nice now? You don't have to shut one before the other one?
That's a little better.
It's
Yeah.
not much?
No, you still have
So
to lock
it's-
those doors.
Do these automatically, like if you just push a button, they'll all just shut down at the same
You
time?
can, yeah.
Lock down at the same time?
I like the idea of added security with the things that happen in the schools. Ability to just have lockdown immediately. Doors that have been remained open. You go into lockdown, you can do that from one location.
Well, I know I think on the elementary side, is it, if you would lock your classroom, the teacher has to literally go outside the classroom and lock the door. So they would be out in the hallway.
Most people have to do that.
I know. I think they're
Is there a
building them
is
so
there
you
a
can.
classroom that doesn't do that? I think
Well,
all classrooms are like that.
I think isn't there a way that you can lock them from the inside too, so the teacher doesn't have to?
I have,
Which then the kid's gonna lock the teacher out.
Huh?
yeah.
Well, I mean, you can, like your house, you can lock it from the inside, you can
Right,
still
right.
get access to it from the outside. But I was just thinking, the
right.
teacher's exposed if they ever have to lock the
Yeah.
classroom down, they're out in the hallway and
Yeah. See,
exposed
that's
to the
pretty
element.
typical. It requires a key to lock.
Are you talking about the breezeway doors, the east and west door, and not the north and south door?
No, the north and south.
You're talking about the north and
Inside
south
the building,
doors,
yes.
inside the building.
Yeah, those doors. So we could set those to, you know, during school day, they would be unlocked and we would go through. If we did have a lockdown, those can be locked immediately.
And they're on a lockdown, that's locked from going in or out.
No, because you still have the panic bar that you can push. Well, actually, they have, most of the doors have a motion sensor that will unlock the magnet lock. And then they would have the key swipe, the electronic key swipe on both sides so staff can get through when it's locked.
Seems like a lot of money.
It is.
Are the east and west doors locked all the time?
The east door is, correct? When the west door in the courtyard is
Courtyard is
never
locked,
locked.
it's never locked.
Right. So, which concerns me if, you know, it'd be, take some doing, but if you got into that court, if somebody got in that courtyard area over the building, they could, and those breezeway doors were not locked, the north and south ones, which we had last week, a few times.
You have one last one?
Where those breezeway doors were not locked. Usually they are. There was a couple of times I did find them where they weren't secured, either didn't catch or they weren't locked.
These are the last doors that we got. I don't know if it. We need them.
The last doors, are these the last ones we removed?
Is it junior high ones or anything like that?
Yeah, down by the, east end of that hallway, but yeah, by the, yeah, at the other end by Mr. Smith's classroom, right there. Yeah. I think, yeah.
And on the blacktop, that
Black,
one has
yeah.
one.
I think this would be, yeah, would be it. On high school side there.
And the new school, the kindergarten, it's already like that too, and wasn't it built that way?
There it is.
How come we didn't do that door down there on that end, the grade school, and what just the rest of them?
Yeah, I don't, on the east end, you're talking,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, that's a bad door, though, yeah, that's right. I don't know.
The one on the north is a bad one. This kid, you're coming in and out with a special education, coming back and forth with students and stuff, and those doors, they're really tricky. They're always, you know, that
To
north
get
side.
them closed and closed properly.
Yeah.
You sometimes have to press that panic bar and kind of jiggle it and watch it and make sure that that's
It's-
closed properly.
A lot of times it's, you know, open. Or it used to be open, or two for a couple of years.
You want a motion?
Take them here.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the purchase of the additional electronic door locks and amount not to exceed $15,700.
With that, I would try to take the 11,500 bid and then get the wire run for cheaper. And that's the goal there. But if we can't get that done, we would take the,
Do we have to maintain a certain, like, security agreement, collection limits? Are they the only company that can monitor this hardware?
I don't know the answer to that.
Just, you know, I know that there's a local company that provides security services on a paper, evaluated in the original.
What are we trying to keep out with these little doors though, as far as the breezeways go?
The breezeway, it is, the likelihood that somebody gets in the courtyard and can get into that, the building through those breezeway doors is pretty unlikely.
What
But,
are you thinking they're gonna do, steel stuff or?
well, to get in, no, they could get, if they got into that breezeway area
Yeah.
and could get into the building
Yeah,
and do whatever.
yeah.
I'm thinking outside of school day.
But don't you think if somebody really wants in them doors, they're gonna get in? Cause, I mean, what are they, glass?
Yeah,
So, I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, they're all
just
glass
locking them, they
doors.
wanna really
yeah.
help
I
a whole
mean,
heck of a lot. Because,
Sure.
I mean,
And that goes for,
you're just pretty much keeping the honest people out unless you wanna change the doors and make them steel or.
and it does make it easier to lock those down immediately if we need to. God forbid we have a lockdown. We can lock those doors. In that event.
Happen, I mean, those glasses, definitely. I mean,
Sure,
anybody go through.
yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I mean, it's not really, we're not really doing anything for the safety of anything, I don't think.
The original system was bought before I was on the board. I kind of feel the same way sometimes, that
Well, I could see if there's
keeping
metal
honest
doors
people
or
out,
something.
or, you
Yeah.
know, it's,
Because anybody wants to, I mean, all you gotta do is have a firearm or
Well,
whatever.
I
Yeah.
know how you feel on that bill about spending money, but I know that I've sat through some lockdowns that have been necessary. And the ability that, I know we didn't have lockdown like this, but our building has been basically our whole building had a lot of updates on some things, but a lockdown is necessary. And we essentially leave everything unlocked from the exterior except a few doors where they can come in into the main building. But, I think the ability to lock those two doors that go through there, especially since we have a high volume of traffic, you never know what's gonna happen in the school district. And yeah, a person can go through glass, but if you've shown the effort to secure things, I think, I feel like it's important. I know the one to the east that we're talking about is real important, that make
Well,
sure.
yeah, I think
The breezeway one, somewhat questionable, but I think it slows somebody from, you can kind of block off a little bit of traffic, at least slow them down.
Well, one thing about it, if they're in that breezeway, there isn't much in those hallways that, they're gonna have to go one direction, or when they get to the high school and junior high, before they're gonna hit a lot of population, so.
No, and you're right.
At least it'd be a deterrent. Somebody could see them, they can be, the direction, they can be on the sides like this.
And Bill, you're right, if they want in, they're gonna get in. And if they take a tire iron through the window and get in the building, at least we know they've been here. If the door's unlocked, they get in and,
It's your
we don't
fault.
know they've been here. The same goes for the front door. They can break that window through and get on in.
We basically have all the doors on a time system right now, right? Right, so they're locked at a certain time.
Some of them are never unlocked with the time system, they just work on the key card.
Well, it's sad that we've had to get to this point in time in life. I do think it's important. You are here to protect the children, so, and the teachers and stuff.
What would be reasons for lockdown?
Oh, I mean, trigger, you're seeing more and more of maybe you have a pedophile type of person, or if you get a threat,
Or
So you had a,
Someone in the building with a gun.
Custody situation.
the custody, I would
we've
say
had,
would be a
we've had
custody.
those custody situations.
Somebody that can't take their children and they come and they wanna they're gonna take that class.
So it's more than just a theft issue, it's a child safety issue.
Yes.
For a student safety.
But if you don't spend that much money, well, I guess there's glass on each side, so it really, but that can't get concerned in that.
We have glass on
There's glass
this.
everywhere.
Well, I know, that's what I'm saying, so.
The whole building is almost,
Well, you notice schools are building with less and less glass all the
Yeah.
time.
makes it sad because you just get like
That's right.
in prison.
That's right, that's what I said, it's sad, it's come to that, but safety is an issue.
Very much.
I don't want to spend the money either.
Well, I just thought if you're gonna spend this much money, you might as well spend a little bit more and get good doors in there, but like I said, ain't gonna do any good, because there's glass all the way around it, so.
But we can always upgrade the doors. The lock system, once the lock system's in place, you can always upgrade the doors.
We really, the panic and all the mechanisms have actually, we haven't had near the repair on doors since we've done this protection. Would you say that on the flexible side?
To the different to the bar, instead of those old doors that have these, like a breezeway, they're better, much better.
You're just not working the mechanism.
Yeah, sometimes that, they just don't use. Yeah. And now when they're on timers like that, you can turn them on and off, which, easy, handy. But yeah, it's.
That's second.
Then moving second to approve the purchase of additional electronic roll locks not to exceed the 15.7. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign, 7-0. Credit card authorization.
I'm gonna turn the floor to Julianne for this one. The credit cards.
Currently, the district maintains 2 credit cards, one in the name of James Kenworthy and one in the name of Andreas Sikis. Obviously, the one in the name of James Kenworthy needs to be canceled. We're recommending that we cancel both of the accounts that are currently with Bank of America and move the accounts to a local vendor, St. John National Bank. It will allow us some additional ease in having the payments approved by the board at a regular board meeting and being able to make those payments still in a timely manner. We are also recommending that we add an additional card in the name of Mike Bergen. All of these cards are kept in the vault in the central office. They are not issued to anyone who doesn't have a signed purchase order. If there are orders that need to be placed, they're placed by either myself or Marla or the superintendent with a signed purchase order before we place the orders. The thought process is that the one in Mr. Bergen's name will be used for student activity fund purchases. The one in Mrs. Siki's name would be used for general supply type purchases, and the one in the superintendent's name would be used for travel for athletic events that the district pays for, meetings that staff would be attending, that type of thing. So, and in order for us to apply for credit through St. John National Bank, they need authorization from our finance committee or our board before they can do that. So.
Next question. If a staff member attends a workshop, you say it's overnight in a motel, how do you generally take care of that?
Depends on the hotel. If they will direct bill, we have it direct billed. If they won't, we will send a card with the staff member.
Then a card, and then how can you send the card only under 3 people?
Generally, they'll take it. Some require a written note that says this person has authority to use this
The
card.
only reason I ask that question is just trying to get away from paying sales tax on additional, in other words, additional fees that we don't need to pay for the school board.
We send a tax exempt form with the staff member along with the credit card. We are still required to pay the occupancy tax.
Right.
We can't get out from underneath that, but we do send the tax exempt form with anyone. We have a form that's already For Walmart, we have a separate card, and there's a tax exempt form that Walmart issues that goes along with that. We have a separate one for like Hobby Lobby and Hutch that we send when somebody is there. But otherwise, we just send a copy of our tax exemption form along with the person who's making the purchase. And it works fairly well.
Is there any fees with the cards?
I didn't ask that question, and that's a good question.
Is it truly a credit card or is it a prepaid debit card?
No, it's truly a credit card.
Pay it off every month.
Which we do.
I can entertain a motion to approve the credit card limits that are stated there.
Mr. President, I move we're approving the credit card limits and $7,500 for Josh Meyer, $2,500 for Mike Irvin, and $5,000 for Ed.
If they ever get cases that need to be above that, or do we have purchases above that now?
Anything, yeah, I mean, we could do a purchase order. I mean, any emergency it could be, but.
In the 3 years
Are
I've
these,
been here.
Have these amounts been approved for the card itself?
Not yet, we have to have the authorization
what this
before
is
we can
for.
apply.
In other words, sometimes you, credit
Really,
card
the
limit.
credit worthy, the district is credit worthy enough to get.
I know my son, they would give you about $500.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this. Any further discussion? All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign.
Don't come next month begging for more money though.
All right, we're ready for reports. Start over here this side. Jack, you have anything? I have nothing to report.
Earlier this evening, I attended the library board meeting. Basically, everything Mrs. Snyder had to stay. Talked about elementary librarian, need for that. New air conditioning for the library, maintenance issues. That need addressed, stuff like that.
Barb?
Are the calendars out yet? Not done?
We're not
I
here.
don't think you hear you.
No. I haven't done anything. Nothing to report.
Carol?
Nothing to report.
Nothing other than it's been hot.
Did the special ed meeting and everything's running pretty smoothly down there. Except we had to have a conference call for some new military hiring, which didn't affect us. But everything seems to be running pretty smooth down there. Doing a lot of adjustments, or not adjustments, renovation to the passive learning center. To make it increase the capacity of people are coming in with soup needs, showers, handicap accessible stuff, ADA stuff. So that's where a lot of it was. And I want to report that on Wednesday, Stan and I and Josh will be attending the Leadership Academy in Topeka for the board. Just to work on relations and work on efficiencies of leadership for the board. So we will announce this next month. So that's all I have, and so we'll turn it over to administrative reports, starting with the elementary principal.
Hello. On page 31 and 32 of the supporting documents is my report. And I have quite a few teachers that took time out of their summer to improve their own education, and I'm really excited to see some of these things showing up in my building and in the classrooms. I know Mrs. Snyder, I think, is on the schedule to talk more about the Earth Partnership for Schools that she and Mr. Cooper and Mrs. Spanky attended. Mrs. Dixon and Mrs. Frank attended a 5-day workshop on Kagan in Great Bend. And I did supply a little more information about what Kagan is down below if you're interested. Both those teachers are very excited about using this research-based strategies for cooperative learning in their classrooms. And then I had a good group of early ed teachers that attended CGI. CGI is a way of teaching math, more of a problem-solving approach, and they are all very excited about what they learned and how they're going to apply that in their classrooms. And then Mr. Cooper also attended the agriculture in the classroom at K-State, which was sponsored by Farm Bureau and Soil Conservation. So again, you know, a lot of teachers putting a lot of their summer time into getting better. These are all things that fit along with moving over to Common Core standards and teaching more of the problem solving rather than, you know, just the factual kind of knowledge. So I'm really pleased. I'm very proud of those teachers for spending that time. And I'm excited to see them use it. Preparations are underway, of course, for enrollment on August 14th. I've got Mr. Joe Coles coming to present to my 5th and 6th grade students and staff on August 31st. Going to do a little team building, leadership building with those students and teachers. I felt last year that that was a need to put some real positive energy into that age group early. I'm hoping will pay off. And we're welcoming Tessa Smith, our elementary special ed department. And of course, we're getting ready for open house beginning of September. I also wanted to add, Teresa Miller did also attend a Pathways to Reading training this summer, a refresher course. So she attended one quite a few years ago, and after seeing what other teachers had been to the refresher, been recently taught, she decided she needed to go and get up to date on that. So again, I'm very proud that those teachers are willing to put that time in this summer. Any questions for me?
Was Tessa replacing somebody or an addition?
Well, Mr. Burgington's, there were some staff changes, junior, senior high, and
This is her retired.
Oh, sure.
So 712 will be Mrs. Lyon now. So then they're going to split K6 between Teresa and Tessa.
I see, okay.
I'm not sure how they're going to split that.
Okay.
I think they're still talking a little bit about that based on caseload
Yeah,
and
numbers.
so.
Thank you. Your report? Mr. Turner?
I have, there hasn't been much going on in school since I've been there on the first. But, right now, projected numbers based on who I know is left or moving and who's coming in. 712 would be 154, just the number, and obviously that could change based on enrollment next Tuesday. You should have an activity account. Shane, did I? Was there an activity account sheet is around there? So, yeah, as you mentioned, Andrea mentioned about enrollment. So that's really, I don't really have anything else as far as, we have a parent meeting, fall sports parent meeting on the 16th. Parents who, all of you that are parents and students in school, are welcome to come back.
Yep. 154 is where at from where we ended the year.
158.
Okay. Mr. Meyer?
I'm trying to be fairly quick here. Just a little bit on our logo there. That purpose, passion, and pride. You know, this isn't anything new that I'm bringing to the district. It's just kind of reminders of some things. You know, I know, you know, the thing I've always known about this community is how prideful it is of its school and its community, and you see that. But the purpose, back by the camera there, that chair is in here on purpose. And I'm going to leave that in here as a reminder of what our purpose is. I know we all know it, but sometimes when we're thinking about the decisions that we're making, we have to remember those kids and how those decisions affect it. And what are we talking about, and what are those kids learning, and what do they have to do with each other. So that's our purpose, and that's what the purpose of that chair is. And Andrea and I talked a little bit today about, goals, and when we think about when we're setting our goals, how are those related for this board? How are those related to student achievement? Not just what we want to accomplish, but with the results that we expect to see out of those kids, because that's why we're here, so those kids learn. The door locks don't have a lot to do with the kids and their learning. Now, we got to talk about it, but it's always important to remember that purpose and the kids that sit in those chairs. The passion, I think, comes from the purpose. That's an easy thing that comes right along with that. That purpose gives us a passion for what we do. And then the pride is something we're going to focus a lot on, just our image, our public image, our grounds, the attitude that we have, the success that we have that brings about that pride. So, teachers are returning August 20. We're going to kind of finalize the things we have to do, plans in place for things that we're doing at the building level. But we're going to talk about this purpose, passion, and pride. Some MTSS throughout the year, that multi-tiered system that supports the collaboration with elementary, implementing the Common Core at the junior high and high school level. Back to the MTSS real quick. I heard a quote in our mission statement, says it right there, but don't tell me you believe all kids can learn. Tell me what you do when they don't. And that's the more important part. And that's what the MTSS is. We get together. When the kids aren't learning, now what? What are we going to do? And then our teacher evaluation changes is kind of up in the air on what's going to happen there. That was part of our discussion with the negotiated agreement, and the teachers kind of want a plan in place of when that's going to happen if we have to do that. That goes along with the waiver. This is the waiver from No Child Left Behind, Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the ESEA or the NCLB. They had a webinar on it the other day, and the audio was horribly bad, so we didn't get a listen in on all of that. But in effect, what that is, the AYP, where all the kids had to be, 100% of our kids had to be proficient by 2014, that's gone. It's a noble goal, that's what we want, but it's not realistic. We want 0% crime rate too, but it's not realistic. So where are we heading? There's still going to be accountability with this, and hopefully next month, if we fit it in time frame wise, we'll see how we are there. I'll explain a little bit more about what's going on there, but it's more based on growth. Not just getting our kids to the minimum level, but we're concerned about the kid that's getting a 95, we want to see growth from him too. And the kid that's getting a 20%, even if you can't meet that minimum, we want to see growth. It's moving away from punishing schools, to a reward system. The evaluation system in Kansas is part of this waiver. That's why we're talking about the teacher evaluation changes. At some point, I think 3 years out from that, the state is going to say teacher evaluation system has to be based in part on student achievement. And the tough thing is, how do we do that? And the state's going to give us a system and say, you can use this or make up your own, but it has to fit with these guidelines. So I think a lot of districts are just going to use what the state has. Common Core Standards is part of this waiver, implementing that. We're already doing that. And then there's going to be a new assessment developed, implemented in 14-15 school year. So I think overall a better system. So just a little bit on that. Anything to add from the gallery? So we'll try to talk more about that in the future and get you some more specifics. Part of the passion piece, this book, Energy Bus, I picked it up this summer. Really good book. It's kind of a story about getting people motivated. And the three of us are going to do a book study over this year. I know they have plenty to do, and so do I. But I think it'll be well worth our time. So when we're talking about the passion, this is going to be part of that, how we work on that with our staff. I'm going to turn it over briefly to Mrs. Snyder, and she's going to talk a little bit about the Earth Partnership Institute that Andrea alluded to. And
Yes, Norman and I went this year, Darlene went last year. And the purpose of it is to train educators to restore prairie gardens on school grounds. And we use these gardens as outdoor learning labs. It was really exciting. I mean, it was very hands-on. Part of it was putting together an action plan, and we'd like to see more teachers involved in this because the materials were just awesome. It was just a fun way to learn about our prairie, but it's math, it's science, it's art. We just had a wonderful experience. So it's hands-on, minds-on, creative arts, science, social studies. Our plan is to sit down with the administration and show them our plan. And we have, part of that was writing an OWLS grant, which will help pay for the plants or the seeds or whatever we need to get the garden started. We are really working through the year to get community and staff and kids on board. And we plan to plant a year from now in October. So we want to show them our enthusiasm for the curriculum that they shared with us, and lots of good things there. So we hope to be bringing more information as we go along.
where are you planning this at?
Well, it still has to go through you guys and staff and everything, but Norman is thinking about, well, he was thinking in between where the trailer used to be, having I think he's looking at a butterfly garden. And Darlene was thinking about maybe in the courtyard, but we also thought to beautify the area there in front of the electronic sign might be one place to start, and might get the staff involved in that. And I am writing a separate grant for the library, and we'll have to decide whether to use the garden, the courtyard, or maybe out by the sign might be a good place to show off. So.
Have you talked to the Stafford school system? They've been doing this for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, no, we haven't yet. I know Lisa's maybe can help us with the OWL grant.
Well, I know they've gone through a lot of different stages as far as how it's been. Merlin has it, your FFA done some of that too.
I would work with them.
So they've had to tweak it many times to try and get it to work. So maybe go on listening to some of their
Let's see
things
how
that get you a little faster start.
We did this at the Dick Arboretum. So they showed us their gardens, and we had a day where we went and visited several area schools. Went down to Newton, there were several down there. And what else is down there?
Did you go to
The Kaufman Museum. That was, and it's really interesting, you know, everything bloomed early this year, or we would have been in the middle of everything. But it was kind of good to see what the drought was doing and what we could do, you know, to.
Did you go to Walton School District?
No.
Have you ever been to their school district?
No, I haven't. I know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
It was an interesting group of people. There was a whole group of, they were preschool teachers out of Wichita with special needs students. And then there was a gal, Pam Martin went with the Kansas Wetland Center, and she's already got part of hers going. And there was from the Indian Center down in Wichita. There was a gal there, so we networked and got some good ideas from different people. So it was a good experience.
You see how I have this agenda and it's separated into two areas. This kind of helps me with my goal of keeping us focused on, you know, the teaching and learning aspect. You know, this administrative part is necessary, absolutely is. Special meeting, August 21st at 6 o'clock. That's for a budget hearing and also for the KSB's goal setting and training session. So make sure that's on your calendar. Head Start preschool. There's one Head Start program in the county, and it's out of Stafford. They've got a grant. It's kind of a blended classroom with like our special ed preschool. They have the same thing there within the co-op. And the Head Start and the Bridges to Learning Special Ed Preschool is going to kind of be in a blended program. They got a grant to pay for some transportation within that Head Start program. So they will, our kids over here qualify for that Head Start program, the ones that do. Stafford buses will be coming to pick those kids up. So this is a heads up that when you see that, they're not coming over stealing our kids. It's part of that. I'm sure we'll get some phone calls reporting that, but I just wanted you all to have a heads up about that it is all legit.
Do we count them in our count?
Not for the Head Start. If they're special ed, we do. And then they would typically be here. Is that correct? And they wouldn't be going.
If we had a preschool, I mean, you know, we have 2 sections of preschool now. And children with special needs get first priority. And then in each class, they have about 5 peer models. But as we all know, those 5 peer model spots fill up very, very quickly. And there, you know, ends up being a lot of people who have children that don't have an opportunity to go to preschool. They were doing 1 section of preschool in Stafford, same kind of setup through the co-op. Now they're doing 2, so that opened up quite a few more spots. Still, special ed kids are getting first priority. Once those are filled up, then they can do peer models. And yeah, they have a grant to transport people. And yeah, so along with what Mr. Myers was saying, I'll be enrolling Madeline. She's going to go to preschool in Stafford. There wasn't a spot for my child here. And so, yeah, you might get phone calls because John and I will be at Stafford enrolling our child. So.
It speaks to the need of, you know, our last meeting we brought that on, and I know it's a clear need. I think we need to try to address somehow. But anyway, it's money.
See if we can get something here in the next.
We have ways to expand if we offered more preschool.
I believe we do have a room that we could use. Not that it would be easy, but
We could fund it.
yeah, I mean, this is extremely important. This is extremely important. I mean, you know.
Especially if we're gonna bring young people back into our county.
Is there anything that prevents us from allowing people to pay for a service that they would receive through preschool? I think there are parents that would be willing to pay at least something, paying for daycare.
We can
Or
charge
even paying for busing.
service.
I mean, if the busing problem is an issue or a cost, I think.
Yeah. I think it definitely
They pay
needs
the
to be
bus.
a priority for us to look at ways to do that. And there's a lot of different options, and we'll be looking at those. It's definitely too late for this year, of course, but. Open positions, we still have a food service position to fill. The plan is to get that person hired, and then we'll approve that at our special meeting on the 21st. they will start the day before that. Student council sponsor, and junior high assistant volleyball we still have open, and
What's he
high
looking at
school
you for?
assistant boys coach, and high school cheerleading, we have that to discuss. And then we will fill maybe student council and the assistant football coaching position. You will see a bill at some point for mentoring for me. That's part of the requirement for my certification. That's going to be paid by the State Department of Education at the end of the year. So when you see that come through, that's what that's for. It's going to be reimbursed at the end of the year. Merlin also already brought up the board leadership seminar on Wednesday, and then we have several maintenance projects coming through midsummer's been tough, trying to get everything coordinated and decide what can we push through to get done and what can we not. But the carpet, the guys are here, tearing out the carpet, the band room will be done before the start of school, probably this by the end of the week. The auditorium shortly after that. The art room tiles down, looks great in there. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be moving stuff back in there. Somebody's anxious to get in there, I think.
The kilns were in last time I looked.
Yeah.
The kilns were in.
The painting in various areas, the ladies' restroom, and then some other classrooms, and then the gym floors were supposed to be done last week. They assured me by midweek.
Probably Monday
If
morning.
not, I think it'll be next week. The boardroom, if you have any opinions on how we set this up, Merlin mentioned he kind of likes being around the same table. All of this stuff back here, I plan to get rid of and maybe get these folks a place to sit over there with the table to work at. If you have any opinions on what needs to happen with this space, let me know. Find out the history on this and where we can put that. I understand things like that have a history and I don't want to.
It's the library.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be just tossing
Need
it
an
out.
extra desk
I'm
upstairs?
just
Yeah.
trying to think where was that or.
So if you have any opinions on how we should set things up, or just clean it up a bit, make it a little nicer in here. I've got if anybody's interested in applying to be the KSB president-elect, I've got an application for you here. And that's all I have for my.
You get to travel.
report.
Think of the opportunity, Bill. All right, thank you. Thank you for through the time. I like your passion. Executive session. How much time would you like?
15. I need Mr. Bergen initially, and then just the board and myself.
15 minutes, maybe a break.
And unless anybody needs Andrea for anything, we'll get her out here. And then Mr. Bergen right after we visit with him. If you guys-
No, I entertain a motion to go into executive session for 15 minutes.
Mr. President, I move the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters in order to protect the privacy of non-elected personnel. And that they return to open session 15 minutes in this room. People invited are Mr. Bergen and Mr. Contender and the board.
Second.
Moving second to go into executive session. Any discussion? Go into executive session for 15 minutes.
You can get a motion, I'd recommend hiring Krista Snyder for the student council sponsor.
Mr. President, I move we hire Christy Stoddard for our Stuco council president. Or advisor, not president.
Been moved and second to hire Krista Snyder as Stuco sponsor. All in favor, right hand. Pose same sign, 7-0.
I recommend hiring Chris Story as assistant high school football coach.
Mr. President, I move we hire Chris Story as assistant high school football coach.
Move second to hire Chris Story as the assistant high school football coach. All in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 7-0.
I recommend accepting the resignation of Misty Newell as high school cheerleading sponsor.
Mr. President, move to accept the resignation of Ms. Newell.
Second.
Then moving second to accept the resignation of Ms. Newell as high school cheerleading sponsor. All those in favor, right hand. Opposed, same sign. 7-0. Future agenda items.
Just a reminder about the special meeting and the waiver. I hope to have better information for you next time. And then, of course, our policy updates. We'll finalize those and then that capital outlay resolution. So be thinking about that, communicating with folks about that, thinking about what you want to do there.
How to notify everybody about that meeting. It's the day after teacher report comes, right? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I move we adjourn.
Move second to adjourn, all in favor, right hand?